You ever see somebody walk into a room like they already know they've won? That's how Karen Pembroke strutted into that courtroom, head up, hair teased, sky-high designer purse swinging like she was leading a parade, clutching that lawsuit paperwork like it was her golden ticket. She didn't even glance my way. In her head, this was already over. She'd spent months making my life a living hell, and today was supposed to be her victory lap. If she knew what I had tucked in my briefcase, man, she would have tripped right over those heels. See, what Karen didn't know, and honestly what I barely believed at first, was that she'd been living her best HOA president life in a house that sat partly on my land. Yep. The self-declared queen of Maple Grove, my personal tormentor, had her palace built right smack where it shouldn't be. But let me back up a sec, because if I start in the middle, you'll miss the real magic of how this went down. 6 months before that courtroom circus, I made the dumbest, most expensive mistake of my adult life. I bought a house in Maple Grove. The realtor made it sound like a dream corner lot, historic district, unbeatable opportunity. That place had been sitting empty for almost a year, but did I listen to my gut? Nope. The price was good, commute perfect, and the 1960s ranch was ugly but had potential. I thought, what could possibly go wrong? You ever get your answer faster than you want? Next morning, I'm knee-deep in boxes. Haven't even found my coffee pot when someone starts banging on my door like the FBI. I open it to find this woman, early 50s, pressed khakis, crisp white shirt with the HOA logo clipboard clutched so tight it looked dangerous. I'm Karen Pembroke, president of the Maple Grove Homeowners Association. She fires off, no welcome, no hi. We need to talk about several violations I've already noticed. She rattled them off with the cold precision of a drill sergeant. Moving truck parked too long. Lawn a quarter-inch too high. Mailbox not the approved model. I hadn't even found my toothbrush, and she's waving a stack of violation notices under my nose, $300 in fines. And she finishes it off with this brittle little smile like she's done me a favor. Welcome to the neighborhood, she says, and stalks off. Only then do I realize her house sits right behind mine like a watchtower. From that day on, Karen turned my life into her hobby. She fined me for my garden hose being the wrong shade of green. She measured the gap between my trash cans with a tape measure, like she was working a crime scene. I changed my blinds, and she knocked first thing the next morning. Apparently off-white isn't white enough for Maple Grove. But the real kicker, certified letter 6 months back, HOA dues and late fees, $400. Apparently I'd inherited some deadbeat's debt along with the house. When I tried to explain I'd need to check my closing documents, she just folded her arms and shut it down. There's nothing to review. Every homeowner pays. Or I'll put a lien on your property. You know what I mean? Like she was the judge, jury, and executioner all rolled into one. That night I covered my dining table with every document from closing deed title survey stuff I barely looked at before. That's when I noticed this weird old land lease attached to my deed dated July 15th, 1973. It said my property included a strip of land outside the surveyed lot, leased for 99 years, paid in full. Curiosity got me, so I dug into the county records, and what I found made my jaw hit the floor. That strip, it covered a big chunk of Karen's backyard. I went down to the county recorder's office. Old guy named Harold helped me sort it out. Oh yeah, I remember this mess. He chuckled, peering at the documents. Back in the 70s, developer went belly up, sold the lots in pieces. Nobody ever cleaned up the records. You're holding a valid lease, and when her house was built in 91, part of it went right on your land. Let me tell you, I felt a little dizzy, but mostly relieved. I hired a real estate attorney, David Lawson, who spent 2 weeks combing through all of it. When he finally called me, and his first words were, legally, she's been trespassing on your land for over 30 years. You could charge rent, or if you really wanted, force her to move the structure. Look, I didn't want to tear down anyone's house, but I was done letting Karen steamroll me. When she sent another letter demanding $3,000 in dues and penalties, that was it. David drafted a letter back. My property, thanks to the old lease, was exempt from HOA membership. And oh, by the way, there's a boundary issue that needs resolving. Karen must have read that letter 10 times because the next morning she was pounding on my door, red-faced, waving our attorney's letter like a battle flag. How dare you try to weasel out of your obligations? I don't care what some lazy lawyer says, she shouted right there on my porch. You live here, you pay dues like everybody else. She was so mad she couldn't hear herself. I kept my cool and said, Karen, you might want to have your attorney review the paperwork, which of course made her even angrier. I'm suing you. You'll pay every dime and my legal fees. And just like that, the war started. The next week I got served. Karen sued me for unpaid dues, late fees, legal costs, and get this, intentional infliction of emotional distress on the HOA board. Over $10,000. David and I sat down, decided to play it slow. Our official reply just restated that my property was exempt. And, oh yeah, by the way, here's our counterclaim for trespass and unjust enrichment. When Karen's lawyer, this young guy named Bradley, got that counterclaim and saw the documents, the whole vibe shifted. 2 days later, David gets a call, puts it on speaker. I don't think my client understood the situation, Bradley says, real careful. Maybe we can resolve this. But Karen wasn't about to back down. At the settlement conference, she sat there with her arms crossed, shooting daggers, convinced she could just bully the facts into submission. I've lived there 20 years. You can't just waltz in with some old lease, she snaps. David lays out everything, deed, lease, county maps, the works. Bradley's face goes pale. Mrs. Pembroke, he says, these documents appear to be legitimate. Karen explodes, slams her hand on the table, calls it fraud. The mediator, a retired judge named Patricia Chen, studies the files for nearly an hour, then looks over her glasses at Karen. These documents are authentic, properly recorded, and legally binding. You should consider settling. Karen storms out, see you in court. 3 months pass. The big showdown finally arrives. Karen sweeps into court in her sharpest suit, HOA president pin, flashing lips pursed so tight you'd think she was biting a lemon. She sits at the plaintiff's table shuffling papers, giving me that look like if she stares hard enough, I'll just disappear. Judge Hamilton, no-nonsense guy, reads the case file. Karen's attorney goes first, calls me a delinquent homeowner trying to game the system. Then David stands up calm as a lake at sunrise and starts laying out the facts. My property predates the HOA. The old lease exempts me from dues. And oh, by the way, Karen's house is built on my leased land. The whole room goes silent. Judge Hamilton leans in, scans the survey maps and satellite images. Let me make sure I understand, he says slowly. Mrs. Pembroke's house is partially on land leased to Mr. Thompson. David nods. Judge turns to Karen. Were you aware of this when you purchased your home? Karen's gone from red to ghost white. No, Your Honor. This is the first I'm hearing of it. He looks at her, then at the paperwork. For 30 years, you've been collecting HOA dues from neighbors issuing fines, and all this time, part of your house is on his land. Karen tries to protest. But the HOA is legal. We have documentation. Judge just shakes his head. Documentation doesn't trump property rights. Let's be clear. After what felt like forever, the judge makes his ruling, finds in my favor, says my property is exempt from the HOA, dismisses all her claims with prejudice. But then he turns to my counterclaim. Mrs. Pembroke has been unjustly enriched by using the defendant's land, he says. I won't order her to tear down the structure, but I am ordering back rent $18,000 for the past 3 years, plus $400 a month going forward. Karen just about jumps out of her chair. I'm not paying rent for my own property, she yells. The judge fires right back. It's not your property, Mrs. Pembroke, and you better watch your tone in my courtroom. He adds, you're lucky he's not asking for removal of the house. He wasn't done, warns her to stop harassing me with HOA fines, or next time she'll be in contempt of court. Karen's lawyer just packs up, looking like he's aged a decade. As I leave, I hear Karen barking into her phone down the hall, emergency board meeting. No, it can't wait until Tuesday. You couldn't make this stuff up. 2 weeks later, 2 letters show up. One's a check for $18,000 and a signed rental agreement. The other is from the HOA board. Karen Pembroke has resigned as president, effective immediately. Word gets around she was basically booted after humiliating the whole HOA. Her iron rule broken overnight. But here's the final twist. 6 months later, a moving truck shows up at Karen's. She can't take living next door to me, paying rent, being reminded of her defeat. She sells the house at a loss, forced to disclose the land lease to every buyer. The new owners, the Johnstons, a young couple, pay their rent on time and are actually good neighbors. Invited me to their housewarming even. Karen. She moved across town, found a place with no HOA. Guess she'd had enough of ruling kingdoms. Every year when that rent check arrives, I just smile, thinking about the day Karen Pembroke learned the hard way. You try to push someone around, you better check whose ground you're standing on. So what do you think, is that justice or just luck? Ever tangled with an HOA bully who got their comeuppance? Drop your thoughts in the comments, share your own wild HOA stories, and don't forget to hit subscribe if you want to see more tales like this. Trust me, in the world of HOA drama, there's always another surprise around the corner.